Hey, I'm back again. So I wanted to show you, try and finish getting this across. So I've got the, this is the one that I cracked. It's fine. I just put it together with the super glue and we're good to go. I'm just going to glue it into the part here. And just set her down and press it in, and you can see that's flush. So I'm going to let that cure for a minute, and while that's happening, let's just take a look at the fuselage here. So I've got a good start on the fillering adding filler to the tail surfaces, such as there. And you see that's just the start. I think this is the second full coat of spackle I put on the stabilizer and tail fin, vertical fin. And you can see I've started the process of creating these fairings. So the next step here will be to lay the tape on along that delineation for the fairing here and also on the tail. So on the tail, the tape line will come up and out this way. That's exaggerated, it's not exactly, but out this way. And on the fin, it'll do the same. It'll closer to the tail, and then as we go toward the nose of the airplane, up it'll rise to about here. And then that's true on the top and bottom and both sides of the fin. And then the filler is laid in to that opening revealed by the tape and layered in there pretty liberally, pretty thickly. And then it's all up to me and the sandpaper to make that look proper in there. Okay, and when we get to that process, I'll show you what I mean. Now, on this part, let's swing the camera over just a little bit. I kept talking about how you want the grain on these two parts to be across 90-degree angles from each other. So if I hold this this way, this is east and west, and then we'll hold this one north and south, so that when we put it together, and I know I'm probably beating this to death, you know, endless descriptions of what I'm talking, but anyway, there will be different, you know, skill levels for viewers of this video and my channel. People who just want to watch somebody, you know, go through the process, and then there'll be others who are looking for, you know, ideas or inspiration or information. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this just a little bit, as I did with the other bomb, and just to bring the plastic down flush with the balsa deck. Obviously, if there's any plastic, if it's not flush and there's plastic, you know, a lip above the balsa, and that's happening on, whether it's happening on one side or both sides, it'll hold that, it'll hold the two halves apart enough that we won't get a good bond. And ultimately, this is about getting a good bond, a lasting bond here between these parts, and some durability, which is what I'm always after. Anyway, we get that nice and flush, and then at this point now you can feel that it's wood to wood and there's no plastic interference, just as with the other part. So you're just going to put adhesive down to one side. You don't have to worry about the dust or anything, you just leave it, it's fine. This is super glue, remember, it's freaking super. So we got this grain running east and west. We'll get this one going north and south. We'll just give it a little twist as we put this on here. Remember, it doesn't have to be a perfect 90 degrees. The only thing you really want to make sure of is that, and don't worry about that either, is that I'm getting an even joint. Pulled that apart, didn't I? In other words, I don't want this to be out of register. The two halves need to line up pretty good, because it's a cylindrical, you know, the final object needs to be a cylindrical shape, and not oblong or out of round. And we're just going to take a look and make sure she's not oblong there. That's my test. That's the extent of my technical test and evaluation of proper fit location. And again, I'm sticking to the part, which is never good. It's something I only do when I have a camera on. Oh, that's not true. So still not bonding up. Well, that looks pretty good there. So you want to, obviously you want to let those two wooden discs cure in each half before you do this step. Otherwise you're going to be pressing one side or the other into the plastic, and you could end up with a bond that isn't what you want. Part going off at an angle on it. I've got a great deal of buildup there that needs to come off. I don't know why I bother with the camera. I'm really this close to just saying I'm just going to build these things without doing the YouTube channel. It really is a pain in the ass. I can work for hours, literally, without these kind of mishaps. And I really did get glue all over this part. It's fine. The plastic cleans up. 400 grit sandpaper takes off any fingerprints or super glue residue or any of that stuff, comes right off, and you still end up with a smooth part. Remember, everything is getting at least one dusting, coating of the primer paint, which is a sandable primer, and that really is effective in filling scratches left behind by sandpaper, provided you sand it correctly and don't use too heavy of a grit for the work in front of you. Like I don't, honestly, this is really getting frustrating here. Why this is happening, not adhering. It's a good bond. It's wood to wood. For some reason that glue maybe I've got a problem with this adhesive. Maybe I need a fresh bottle. Something is definitely not happy. This stuff normally bonds in just, anybody out there is familiar with super glue. It just doesn't take this long. Alright. Or it's just me. I'm gonna get this stuff all over me. Right, so anyway, that's the process that I use for connecting plastic pieces like this. Doesn't work with pilot figures and that kind of thing. Anything that's misshapen or oddly shaped, but anything that's got this kind of symmetry to it. You can see how the bomb fin section, the tail section of the bomb, with the wooden plug and so forth. I know these are supposed to be open, and I think they have these rectangular cutouts in them to stabilize and make sure that the bomb doesn't tumble in the air, that it falls nose down fairly straightly. So it wouldn't look quite like this. But I'm going to reach back to my original and usual claim that I just take the materials I'm given, for the most part, and do what I can, best I can with those. And in the case of trying to cut into this and make a better characteristic, a better representation, just isn't in the overall project, is not a focus of mine. So I'll leave that to the next kit builder or whatever. So essentially, when you look at this finished project of mine, yeah, there will be some elements of it that are not, to scale. And I've mentioned this before, but part of what I'm going for is just the overall aspect of the aircraft, so of the model. So when you stand back and you look at it, you're taking it all in at once and not narrowly focused on any one aspect or the other of it, but as a whole, taken as a whole. How does it look? And that's where my emphasis is. Yeah, there'll be some nice nifty details along the lines that I care for, if you will. But as far as weapons go, bombs, machine guns, rockets, and those kinds of things, I don't put a lot of emphasis on making those look right. I could go into why that is, but I think anybody with, and I don't want to belabor it, like I've talked about this before, I started off building just civilian aircraft in this method because, there's been an awful lot of killing in our history, and canonizing it, or I don't intend to honor that aspect of flight. Yeah, this is a warbird, and wars have been fought, and then it's not necessarily a bad thing depending on which side you're on. But it's not what I want my work to focus on. The reason I'm doing the warbirds, the P-40, this one, and probably a Wildcat at some point, is because they represent something more to me than just the warfare. There's technological advancement, and most of that comes through conflict, and that's true. We don't tend to get excited about things that save lives and make the planet better. We tend to celebrate the other stuff and canonize it, and that's unfortunate. It's also out of my control. I can't make people different. So I make these kits, I make these airplanes, and I like the P-47 because it was designed by an immigrant who was fleeing Russia. America has benefited from thousands and thousands. Nikola Tesla is another. The list is just endless. And this airplane was designed ahead of every other major and important aircraft in U.S. production at the time, gearing up for World War II. This was the best machine available. It was purpose-built to escort bombers long distances and safeguard their passage. That's what it was built to do, and that's what it was capable of doing, regardless of what U.S. history books tell you about its short range and inability to escort bombers. This aircraft could carry 3 external fuel tanks, and the pancake tank, the ferry tank, was huge, 150 gallons or more, plus 2 50-gallon tanks, plus the internal fuel store. This aircraft could escort the bombers as far as they were traveling in 1943. They weren't going into Germany on the regular. They were used to bomb the German installations in France first. And that was in no way, shape, or form outside the capability of this aircraft to fly and fight and stay and do its job. The problem was General LeMay and the bomber mafia, who had command of the U.S. Air Corps, Army Air Corps, in the early years. They focused on bombers being not needing escort. That was their idea. We build enough of these bombers, we crew them, 9-man crew, 16 guns, whatever the number of guns is, and fly in formation, and we don't need fighters. That was what they were telling everyone. And they could do daylight precision bombing unescorted, and it was a lie. It was not, it didn't actually pan out. So LeMay was removed, Hap Arnold took over, and they never flew unescorted again. The bombers' missions over France and Germany were never unescorted after that, or at least until we had air superiority, total air superiority. What they said was, when Hap Arnold took over, was the reason we suffered those heavy bomber losses and lost all of those men was because we didn't have a fighter that could escort them over long ranges. That was not true. P-47 could do it. They just needed an excuse, a way to save face. Oh, thank God for that P-51. Now finally we have an escort. Oh, the P-38. Finally we have an escort that can do the job. The only reason we flew all those missions without escort was because we didn't have an airplane that could do it. It was LeMay didn't want escorts. He and the rest of his bomber mafia thought they could do it without them. They were proven wrong, and he was removed for that mistake. Anyway, that's one of the reasons I like the P-47. And if you look at Seversky's earlier aircraft, the P-43, for one, and you can see the lineage of this aircraft. The Seversky, I don't know what the P-35, I think it was, had some of the characteristics of the P-47, and the P-43 Lancer looked a little bit more like the P-47, and then finally they loaded. What they did was he basically designed the airplane around the same engine and supercharger that the B-17 used, and our 2800 with that same supercharger attached underneath the fuselage. Inside, buried in here, was that big supercharger. This aircraft could fly